So the theme this week is likeness, which is quite a challenge for any of us. And I think the challenge begins with just the whole notion of what does somebody look like, because I think that's a very subjective question. And I think likeness is a very elusive phenomenon. So what I'm going to suggest and what I'm going to demonstrate, Ivan's modelling for me for the start, and I'm going to do 3 different drawings using some different techniques, familiar ones, techniques that are a bit more instinctive, intuitive, hopefully, in an effort to kind of identify some characteristics of Ivan's face and head that will help me if I go on to do a painting. So the first one is very familiar, of course. It's continuous line. I've got a charcoal or a pastel pencil, and I'm drawing without lifting the pencil off the page. I've asked Ivan to look to the side because I think that gives me a certain kind of lighting, which I think helps clarify something of his face and hopefully some of the characteristics that I want to work with. So I'm going to do some drawings. This is the continuous line one, and I suggest this because if you can follow this exercise, which is a kind of intuitive, instinctive way of working, you have to get from one part of the face or the head to another without lifting your pencil off the page, and that often generates, because you're not able to think too much, that often generates some kind of insights about what's characteristic, because you're not thinking as you draw and you're perhaps seeing differently. And I think the things that I would probably start to see, I often find when I do these continuous line drawings that I do make marks and emphasize things that I wouldn't necessarily emphasize if I was thinking about the subject and thinking about what I'm seeing. And I think maybe something that starts to come out, it might be an emphasis in Ivan's mouth, a kind of fullness of his mouth. So that's my continuous line drawing, and I think that's almost all I want to do. Hair's another distinctive thing. People change their hairstyle and people say, oh, you look different. So I think there's something that I want to also work with hair. So that's the continuous line drawing. Maybe get a couple of marks on the neck. So that's one. I'm just going to pause while I change my page. So for a second drawing, I've got Ivan to adjust the angle of his head a bit, and I'm going to try a charcoal rub away drawing. And so again, it's a familiar way of working, but it's also a way of working where I'll be looking not so much at individual features, but much more at the pattern of light and shade. And therefore, hopefully, I'll be identifying characteristics in a more kind of holistic way. Because I think if you can get the lighting right, then you can portray, or you can portray someone's appearance in a more helpful way. You can clarify their appearance. So this is all my starting point with this whole theme of likeness. I'm trying to, through these instinctive drawings, create or collect information about my subject. And I'm going to go on to work a bit in paint and colour. And this process is hopefully going to teach me something about my subject. And it's also going to give me some material that I can refer back to once I get into a more complex piece of work in colour, painting or mixed media or pastel or whatever. So I'm going to show you three ways of producing a drawing, and then I want to work a bit from a photograph and from the information in these drawings. And these first two drawings have been fairly general, really, because I think I want to start with a kind of overview of my subject, and then once I start looking in a more detailed way at the shape and the characteristic of different features, those details will have been built on, kind of solid foundation of these initial starts. Because if you dive straight into features, then I think the risk is that you produce something that's fragmented and doesn't have the kind of holistic integrity or of something with a good foundation. So that's a second way of working. I'll pause again just for the third one. So the third bit of drawing I'm going to do is kind of combining the first two. In fact, I'll use the charcoal first. So I've got the charcoal, I've got my brown pastel pencil, and I've got a bit of chalk, and I'm working on grey paper this time. So I was going to do the charcoal first. Do it with my eyes half closed, and I've got another view of Ivan looking in a different direction. Eyes half closed, I just want to get down some of the tonal shapes. Because I'm on grey paper, that's always quite nice because it means there's less to do. I've got that pattern of tone in already. And this is kind of 3-colour drawing because I've got the brown pencil, which is warm, and I've got the black charcoal, and then I'll have which is cool, and then I've got a bit of light chalk as well. So again, I've tried to work with some different views. So that's also part of the research. What's the most characteristic view that is going to help me demonstrate certain characteristics of my model. That's a bit of warm. I'll just try some of the light next. So I'm still working kind of tonally. But I'm not wanting to get too much into colour. And also what's quite nice with the working on grey paper is that everything's a bit more sort of subdued, so you can build up to emphasis. And I think a big part of portraiture, likeness, is emphasis. Here everything's relatively subdued, and now I'm starting to put in a few darker marks where I want to bring things out, and I can also put in some lighter marks. I sort of wish I'd used some white chalk rather than this particular colour has come out a bit yellow. But I'm not after true colour. necessarily. Here I'm just looking for, I suppose because I tend to work in a more kind of tonal way, I think that it's the light and dark contrast that I'm putting down, which I think is going to be my guide for a likeness. I'll just try a bit of white chalk. See if that gives me any more. Yeah, that can give me a kind of lighter bit of emphasis where we've got strong light on the nose. So that's my third drawing. So what I'm going to do now is get some photographs of Yvonne and work with my drawings and the photographs to put together a bit of painting. I've set up to paint and I've put my 3 drawings and a prepared canvas board up on the easel. I'm going to work with this third drawing that I did. It's not quite a straight-on view, sort of 3/4 view of Yvonne, and I've prepared, this is an old canvas board, so I'm working with the Zorn palette, and I've put a greenish grey ground on, so that's wet paint. And I'm going to start this process by drawing out some lines and some tonal shapes based on my drawing. So I've got some fluid brown paint. I was saying about working on grey paper. It's quite nice because you have a sort of more subdued start. This is perhaps a little bit like the mid-tone starts that we were talking about sometime last year, I think. So I'm going to work from my drawing, and I'm going to take some of the approaches that I took with the drawings. So I'm on a mid-tone start, I'm putting down some lines, and I've prepared some colours using the Zorn palette so that I can block in some of the initial shapes. And I'm working, so this is going to be a sort of head study. It's not quite a portrait in the sense that it's just going to be a head, and I'm only going to take it so far. So I'm seeing this almost as a part of a process. If I was going to do a portrait, this would be another bit of information that would contribute to, you know, a more complex composition, perhaps. But I've got those 3 views. I chose this one because it possibly worked out the best. But the other views are also useful to me. For example, if I paint a man's nose, I've got a view of it from a different angle. And if I'm endeavouring to get the form of the tip of his nose, which is actually quite distinctive, I've got some other views which will inform me of the form, the shape that I'm trying to create. So this is my first stage. A few lines, and then I'll probably. Now his mouth is also very distinctive, so I'm going to make sure I get it in the right place. I might have taken too much off there. So working wet in wet, it's nice and fluid, and it's a kind of subdued start. So I'm not going to dive in with any emphasis yet, because I want to work up to that, and as I've described with the drawing process, I'm trying to get a general start that's got a good kind of structure and foundation. So having done that, I might now block in his hair, which will be darker. And because I've got a wet surface, I perhaps won't make it too dark. I'll let some of that mix with the wet grey surface so that I can stay a little bit more subdued at this early stage. And because that gives a bit of an emphasis, I think I will also use the hair colour just to go a little bit further with these features. So my plan then is to work from the drawing, get the painting developed, question myself about what are the aspects of this likeness that I'm after, and at the moment I'm thinking a lot about, he's got very distinctive, quite heavy eyebrows, a particularly round tip to his nose, and a very full mouth. So those are things that I do want to give emphasis to as I paint. So that's the brown and then the darker hair colour. And then I've mixed a series of colours, as I say, from the Zorn palette. I'm not sure how this is going to work. This is a slightly warmer, that's maybe not dark enough. This is going to be my warm shadow. I don't think it's dark enough. So what I'll try then is I'll go back to that brown that I was sketching things out with. And what I'm looking to do then is begin to model this head, but always trying to just, almost with reference to my drawings, I'm trying to notice what makes a difference, what makes it look like him, whatever he looks like, and what doesn't. So some of that initial blocking in light and dark shapes is going to get me there a little bit. I'm not sure about my colours here. That's pretty bright. So let's work that in. So this is a stage that I would see as just getting a feel for the colours, and if I wasn't recording I might remix that colour. Anyway, it's interesting. But it's giving me some of the same feel as I've got in the drawing. So yeah, this is just trying things out. And I've made one lighter colour which is very light. So I haven't cleaned my brush, but I was struck by that light on the front of his nose and on the tip of the nose. So I've got something established there. I think I need to now look a little bit more carefully at features. I might also just put in his blue top, because I think colour-wise that would be helpful. And he's got very blue eyes, and I would like to get that working fairly early on, actually. So I'll pause while I mix a bit of paint. Putting a bit of... I extended my Zorn palette then with a bit of cerulean, and I'm just getting a little bit of colour into his clothing. I think that'll be quite useful when want to work with the eyes, and just to balance some of that warm colour I already have. And there was another even warmer skin colour that I've mixed up that I want to try out as well. That might be quite good for cheeks. And so I suppose what I've demonstrated here, apart from using the drawing to sketch out my initial bit of painting, is I'm just trying to get a feel for the colours that I've mixed, because I think I would like to not have to think about that and be able to concentrate much more on the shapes, the tonal shapes, some of the linear emphasis and definition that's in my drawings. So I'm happy enough with those colours, and I want to begin a slightly more critical way of working with those shapes. I think firstly the hair and the eyebrows, I'm looking for something different. And I've come back with some of the darker. It's a very black mixture. It's black with the ochre and some of the cadmium red. And to a certain extent I'm following some of those lines. He's got a lot of very curly hair. Barbers are closed, so it just keeps on growing. So I'm just getting some of that in, and by darkening here that's pushing it back a bit. And I think more crucially, I now want to work on the shape of the eyebrow. I put in the email that Sargent apparently said that this area here, where the eyebrow meets the bridge of the nose, he felt was very significant in creating a likeness. And I think that's possibly because that area changes a lot with expression. So if you like, it's a very expressive part of the face. So that's one thing I would want to concentrate on. I'd like to do a bit more to the eyes, but I don't know if this brush is the right size for that. But it'd be better to stay with this brush, because then I'm doing much broader, simplified things. Let's strengthen the eyes. So I've said this fairly repeatedly. I really want to work with the tip of his nose and with the line of his mouth. So I'll use that black, or it's a black mixture, just to restate this line of the mouth. I don't know if it's too cool. It's certainly too cool for the nose, so I'm going to make a new mixture for the nose. I think there's a lot with his upper lip and the philtrum that I want to develop as well. So I'll pause again, because I want to make a warmer dark for the tip of the nose and for working with the mouth. So with my warmer dark, so it's still the Zorn palette, so it's a bit more red, cadmium red and yellow ochre, a bit less black, and a little bit of white. Not sure if I'm putting it in the right place, but I want to just outline the tip of that nose. And also I'll use that in the upper lip. So I'm still working with a fairly big brush, a brush that's maybe a number 4. It's kind of too big for what I'm trying to do, but I think that should ensure But what I do is still fairly loose. I just want to, I've managed to bring out the tip of the nose a bit. Actually, that would be good with the eyelids as well. That kind of warmth. And then I've made a lighter colour for the lips. So although I'm now trying to, I'll get that in the ear as well. I'm now trying to draw these features a little bit more carefully. I'm still trying out colours in a fairly general way. That's a bit bright. I'll mix that with the darker colour just to bring it back slightly. Because I don't want anything to stand out too much yet. I don't think I'm ready for that. So I think having done that, I mean that's a lot more colour in the mouth. I'm going to shape the top lip a bit now, and then I think I need to work a bit with the eyes. So I want to shape this top lip, I think partly by light, and I sort of recorded that in my third drawing. Some of the light at the philtrum. I don't think that top lip's full enough yet, actually, but I'm getting some of the light falling above the top lip as a way of bringing it out. And actually, now that I've done that, I could probably get a bit more light on the chin. And he's got a kind of dimpled chin as well, which I didn't record in my drawing. But while I'm on that, and I do think this is a good way to work. I'm doing a bit to the mouth, but I can see that that light that I've put on the chin could also be quite effective on the upper lid. So I'm trying to move around, bringing things out gradually, but also just trying to see what's distinctive about this face. And with that same light colour, I'm trying to round that tip of the nose. So, yeah, I should do something to the eye. In fact, well, that brush has still got some of the lighter paint. I'll get a bit on the rim of the lower lid, which I may have to redo. There's a lot I've got to redo. The mouth isn't full enough. Just getting some of that light in there. And let's try a bit of the blue into the irises, which I don't want to be too strong. So I'm not even going to make it as strong as the colour I used in this top. So I've knocked it back with a bit of black. And I'm trying a bit of colour in the lower half of the iris. And then of course it's the whites of the eyes and some shadows under the eyes to get something at that lower lid. Again, which I didn't record in my drawing. I think that would have been worthwhile. And yeah, the slightly more dimpled chin. That's not dark enough. Let's try that. So I think what I've been demonstrating I'm trying to demonstrate the beginnings of a process, and it's not been well, it's been comprehensive for a beginning, but it's the next bit. I mean, inevitably my progress is getting slower, but that's because I'm starting to look at features more carefully, and I've tried to, make some points about the approach of, what colour and so on. Let's soften that. But it's right now that the process has got a lot slower, because I'm trying to look more critically at distinctive characteristics, some of which are in the drawing, but soon I'm ready actually, I think, for a photograph. But I want to get the thing established generally. I think his hair could do with warming up as well, actually. I'll just try some of that warm dark in the hair as well, that might help. So yeah, I'm really at a point now where I think it would be okay to start using a photograph as a bit of a reference and trying to work with the photograph in tandem with the drawing. So I need my photograph to be the same sort of lighting, and there may even be an argument for smaller brushes and making smaller changes to the painting. But I think what very easily happens is one starts to work on detail, and then you begin to lose the sort of unity of the image. That's where I think trying to do something more general, for example, working on the shadow shape, mix up another lot of shadow colour and restate the shadow shape, or perhaps even change the background colour. I mean, I think the hair's getting better, but it might be quite useful for me to now change my experience of this head study by actually repainting the background colour, maybe putting on a grey. I'm going to do that quickly. So a quick bit of background colour. So it was a green grey, and I've just put a bit more white and a bit more yellow ochre, and that it's just helpful to bring out my bit of painting. It's a bit more consistent with the light that I'm putting on the face, and I think it may be that I needed it to change the edge. And that same lighter colour is what I'm just going to try the whites of the eyes. Still on the number 4 brush. That's a bit bright, but it's okay, I think. So there's quite a few things that I really want to work with more, particularly the mouth, and maybe getting some more warmth into the tip of the nose, and gradually altering the shape of the eyebrows, actually. Well, there's lots. So I'm not going to go any further with this painting in the demonstration. I'm ready now to look at a reference photograph, so that as I go on with the same colours, possibly still with the wet painting, refining features, I've got that extra information. And I've tried to articulate what I think are the particular emphasis that I want, making points about Ivan's features, but also making the point that what you're after, likeness, I think, is also, it's a totality, and so you have to find ways of not getting drawn into just details, but ways of going back to a more general treatment of your subject, and that might be background, it might be a bit of colour for the clothing. Certainly it's going from small changes to something that's a bit more general. Okay, so I hope that's useful. I hope that if you don't have a model, I don't think that should be a problem. Hopefully you could work from some good photographs, and whether it's someone you know or someone that you find, we can perhaps discuss. You can tell me what possibilities you have and I can advise on that. So I hope this will be useful for you. It's a challenge. I don't think I've got a likeness yet. I got some likeness in the drawings, but that's a process that needs to continue. Okay, well, see you Monday. Bye-bye.